In today's video, we are taking a look at the game design of Vampire Survival, a game by indie developer Punko released on Steam on December of 2021. Vampire Survival is a pixel art, minimalistic, roguelike survival game, a game which has arguably ignited a new game genre. My name is Simon, I'm a designer, professor, and theorist, and on this channel I am taking a look at the whole world of design, from its theory to its lifestyle. In Vampire Survival, which I will be calling VS from now on, the player is tasked with outlasting an ever-evolving, infinitely growing, tenacious, and amorphous horde of monsters that are constantly trying to kill you. At the start of the game, you choose one of the many playable characters with unique abilities and weapons to destroy as many monsters as you can. When you kill one of these monsters, they drop an experience gem. Collecting enough of these gems increases your level. Each time you level up, you can upgrade your current weapon and attributes or select a new item to add to your loadout, combining these weapons and abilities to turn your character into an ever more dangerous monster killer. Survive the rapidly growing torrent of monsters for 30 minutes and you are rewarded with nothing else but with facing death itself, the Grim Reaper. On the other hand, if you are overwhelmed and defeated by the Horde, which honestly is the most likely scenario for all of us, you will be sent to the home screen with the coins you collected in your pocket and a BV of in-game stats. These coins can be used to acquire new characters, passive abilities, and power-ups to better prepare you for your next run. Every game has a goal that the player is working to achieve. In this case, at its core, VS is a score chaser. At the end of each game session, VS offers the player their various stats of in-game performance. Everything from how much time you survived, to how many and what type of monsters you killed, objects collected, chests open, power-ups achieved, weapons unlocked, amongst many more categories. These are stats that are used for players to compare each other and try to defeat other players' records and get the highest scores in the game, just like arcade games. Now, for score chasers to be engaging, they need to be limited game sessions, so the player can repeat the game in a relatively short period of time and try out different approaches and strategies to achieve this sought-after high score. These limited game sessions can be generated by having a relatively short finite game level, limited needed resources to play the game, or a limited time. The designers of VS chose to go with a limited time to define these limited sessions. This time factor was decided to be shown as a 30-minute timer that ticks down, located at the center top of the screen, a location that reflects the importance of this factor in the game. It is present and easily viewed during a game session. This time element in VS goes beyond just letting the player know how much time it's left in the clock to win the game. By the passing of each minute on the dot, the horde of monsters gets stronger, so the player can use the timer not only as a measure of time itself, but as a gauge of difficulty level of the game, which is why time survived in the game is such an important player stat. Another interesting decision made was to make the clock tick down instead of tick up, which is a subtle but effective factor in enhancing the whole surviving the Halloween parade ambiance. We humans tend to see small or decreasing numbers as negative and big and increasing numbers as positive. Well, for this whole Vampire Survival theme, the negative connotation seems a bit more appropriate when it comes to the numbers. Every minute the clock loses, the horde of monsters gets stronger, faster, bigger, and you feel like your time to survive is slipping away. Now that we know what is the goal of this game, and we have defined how the game session is being limited, let's talk about the obstacles the player has to overcome to win the game. The Horde of Monsters. As mentioned, the level of difficulty of the Horde of Monsters is directly tied to the game clock. With each passing minute, the Horde gets a bit more difficult. The behavior of the monsters themselves in general does not change drastically, aside from a few special cases. They move at the same speed and chase a player in the same manner. Their size and art do change alongside with how much damage they deal and how much damage they need to take to die. The overall behavior of the monsters individually is no challenge at all to the player. The challenge comes from the sheer increasing number of them. The most important aspect from the Horde is the experience gems they release when killed. The drop gems vary in their drop rate and their amount of XP, ranging from blue gems with the lowest XP to then green and then to the red being the highest XP. A very interesting dynamic is generated by this ever-changing moving horde that drops XP gems that the player needs to acquire to level up while evading and killing these monsters. In VS, the game level is very simple, almost non-existent really. It is an infinite scroll in any direction with very minimal obstacles present affecting or challenging the player's navigation. But in spite of the almost non-existing level elements, I really found myself navigating a very complex and dynamic labyrinth with rooms that expanded and contracted, with hallways that were looking to ensnare me and doors rapidly closing in on me to try and keep me in. A game level that I need to constantly strategize how I am interacting with to be able to create the openings I need to get to the largest concentration of XP gems without getting overrun and killed by the Horde, and all of this before the next minute ends. Now, going back to the numbers thing, there is a very important visual element in VS, and that is all the numbers flying off the screen showing off all the damage done to the monster horde. The numbers themselves quickly lose meaning to the players as they become too big and numerous to really keep track of. But nonetheless, it has a positive effect on the player. We feel powerful, even though we can't keep track of all these numbers. We do understand that it is a lot of damage that we're inflicting to these monsters, and we can tell that with every gained level, our damage numbers are going up. This positive connotation to these numbers, paired with the numbers' flashy and colorful animations, make a good feedback loop to generate a power fantasy. When you have mastered this ever-changing game level composed by the Horde of Monsters trying to constantly kill you, you start to gather enough XP to start leveling up in the game. Every time you level up, the game pauses and you are presented with a window that holds up to 4, but by default 3 slots of weapons and power-ups that are randomly shown for you to choose from. The chosen power-up or weapon will be added to your character, and here is where the engaging complexity of the game starts to unfold. Each character has a unique starting passive ability, a choice you make at the start of the game session. So the successful selection of these power-ups during in-game requires you to understand your character-based stats to be able to capitalize and become more adept at surviving. You can add types of weapons to broaden your arsenal, you can power up your weapons you already have, you can enhance character stats like speed, strength, defense, and so on, or you can start to acquire specific items to combine them and create weapons that cannot be acquired in any other way. This mechanic of leveling up is so important to the game that it is the most visible UI element in the screen, making it easy for the players to determine how much they need for the next level without having to take their eyes off the horde for too long. The handling of these weapons and stats start to sound a bit overwhelming, especially when you have so many characters, weapons, and power-ups, and how you combine them is paramount for a successful date with death. But the designers of VS decided to make the handling of the character itself extremely simple. The characters automatically attack in a set cadence. The player has no control over the attack timing or type of attack. They only control the character's navigation, which makes playing this game from a controller standpoint very accessible and creates a very low entry barrier. And I truly think this is a key factor for VS's success. You see, we humans have very specific cognitive requirements to be able to achieve this famous flow state, which is that moment when you're fully engaged and immersed in the activity you are doing. In this case, we're playing a game. The activity can't bore you or overwhelm you. Either state will make you not like whatever it is that you're doing. Whenever we're tasked with too many things to keep track of and perform, our brain starts stressing. We're overwhelmed, and that is what VS runs the risk of doing here. So, by deciding to not give the player the responsibility to decide when and with what to attack, they left the player to be able to wholly focus all of their cognition, their brain power, on the navigation of this ever-changing horde of monsters, as well as trying to figure out what are the best combinations of characters, weapons, and power-ups to survive the clock, generating in the players this flow state. And this game loop of killing monsters to gather XP to level up the character fast enough to be able to choose from a random assortment of new weapons and power-ups that will keep you ahead of the power level of the horde by becoming a more dynamic and aggressive monster killer, to then repeat the cycle indefinitely, is a game loop that its structure is very noticeable, short, and very dynamic, even though it's fundamentally repetitive. This game loop is simple and short while still being dynamic enough to engage players profoundly. The designers of VS understood this and have guarded the simplicity of this game loop by maintaining everything else around this game loop as simple as possible and building on top of it. The game loop is simple enough that the player is able to figure it out by being forced to interact in the game. No tutorials needed. The first level shows an empty level with a few slowly creeping, easily killed bats. The player has enough time to figure out how to move, to notice that the character is attacking without their input, to start to evade and kill one monster, see that that monster drops something, to go ahead and pick up that something and understand how it affects the level up bar, and suddenly everything clicks. Very akin to the simplicity of Mario Brothers' first level. An important feature to the game are the chests. Whenever there is a chest in the game, there is an arrow that appears on the screen that reminds you and guides you to where this chest is, so you don't lose sight of it in the infinite scrolling level you are traversing while frantically trying to survive. Once you get it, you're presented with a colorful and dynamic screen showing the number of coins going up and keeping you wondering when it's stopping. I mean, remember, this is a bonus. The chest also shows 1 through 5 scrolling bands featuring weapons and power-ups as a gambling slot machine would, to then present you with what you have won. Even though the chest does feel like you're pulling the lever on a gambling machine, the designers also made the opening of a chest a necessary step to upgrading your weapons once all required items have been acquired. So the chest is strategically important too. And the overall pause from the high-paced, constant evading and killing of these monsters is a welcome respite that lets the player take a break without feeling like they are hitting pause because the pace of the game is too much for them. In the unavoidable event of your death, the game shows you all the stats of in-game performance and sends you on your way with your pockets full of your well-earned coins. These coins can be used to buy access to new characters and boost passive abilities. This is a very successful way of keeping the player engaged in between sessions and make it so that the player has decisions they can make that let them have some agency to better help them perform in their next run. It creates a metagame, which is also a good guiding mechanic to entice the player to do one more run now that they have this new character to try out or they got a power up to one of their stats. Everything outside the game session is very simple and minimalistic. We don't have tons of different screens to open up, just very minimalistic approach showcasing the quit button, your amount of coins, your options menu with relative limited options, your collection inventory, your unlocked achievements, power-up screen, and finally the credits. When you click on the start button, you're presented with a character selection screen and their stats, and then selecting the level you wish to play in. And that is it. The whole of the game is just making it easy to jump right back into the game and try it just one more time. I really do think that keeping the game design of VS as minimal as possible, safeguarding a very effective and engaging game loop, and building everything in the game to better enable and focus on this game loop is the key to its success. The pixel art of the game is a testament that even though art is very important to the presentation and feel of a game, the mechanics is what makes or breaks a game. And this is not to say that the pixel art produced and used in VS is unfit, but by virtue of being pixel art, it is not as alluring as more modern, flashier, and even photorealistic art styles. The same goes for the narrative components, which this game has very little and is treated in a more satirical manner. Now, when trying to categorize and explain VS, it is a bit hard to accurately and succinctly put it into words. We end up using various mixed genre terms like roguelike with survival in the attempt to communicate what this game is. Depending on how successful this actual game ends up being or any of its emulators, we could be looking at a new game genre. All thanks to VS defining a very elegant game design core from which other designers can now start iterating and adding components to, and expanding and further exploring this possible new game genre design space. This, alongside the high replayability, the high action per minute, the short game sessions, the balanced cognitive requirements, alongside the low entry to barrier and low price points, was the perfect storm for this game to take off. With that said, we have arrived at the end of this video. If you have some insights of your own or want to expand on anything discussed in this video, make sure to comment down below or connect with me via Twitter. If you liked the video, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share the link with someone you think might find this interesting. It really really does help the efforts to build this channel up to be able to create more content like this. I'll see you in the next video.